2023 City of Oshkosh Plan Commission meeting. We're glad you can join us. I see we have a quorum. I do have a few housekeeping items to go over before we begin. Please turn off or silence all personal communication devices. When there's an agenda item that includes a public hearing, please understand that the applicant will be allowed to speak first. After the applicant finishes, the public will be asked to speak. When called upon to speak, please approach the podium and state your name and address for the public record. You'll have one opportunity per agenda item to speak unless a Plan Commission member requires clarification or wishes to ask you a question. After the public finishes speaking, the applicant will be asked if they have a final statement for the Plan Commission, and then the Commission will take action on that agenda item. I appreciate you understanding. Let's go on to the agenda. Roll call, please.
Mr. Coulibaly.
Aye.
Miss Davy.
Aye. I'm here.
Councilmember Ford.
Sorry, misled.
I didn't notice. Mr. Kiefer.
Here.
Ms. Prop.
Here.
Ms. Shireman.
Here.
Mr. Lowenstein. In the audience. Mr. Nichols. Mr. Bowen. Vice Chair Mitchell.
Here.
Chairman Perry.
Here.
7 present.
Wonderful, thank you. Next on the agenda, the approval of the March 21st, 2023 minutes. Plan Commission, what's your action?
To accept as written. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we can have a voice vote on the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Item number 1, grant 2 stormwater sewer easements located at the northeasterly of East 9th Avenue. City of Oshkosh is the owner and applicant. Have there been any site inspections? Okay, I'm going to accept the staff report as part of the record. Please present your summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The city is requesting the granting of 2 storm sewer easements that will cross the city's Riverwalk, which was once Pioneer Drive. Up on the screen, I have a location of the 2 easements. The purpose of the easements is to allow the installation, maintenance, and utilization of stormwater drainage facilities through the Riverwalk property. This photo is a little out of date, but the Riverwalk. Yep. Get the right mouse. It's not working. Oh, there we go. The Riverwalk has been constructed, and the proposed facilities will be constructed underneath the constructed Riverwalk. The easements will benefit property currently owned by the Redevelopment Authority. As you're aware, this is the site of the proposed T-wall multi-use development, which will hopefully be breaking ground soon. The reason we're requesting the easements now is it's easier getting the easements signed and finalized while still under RDA control. The city's attorney's office has prepared all of the necessary documents, and the Department of Public Works supports the proposed easements as they're needed for proper discharge of stormwater from the pending T-wall development. The final documents will be recorded at the Register of Deeds upon Common Council approval. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the 2 storm sewer easements as requested.
All right, thank you. Plan Commission, do you have any technical questions for the planning staff? Mr. Mitchell.
So is the intent of these easements to allow for storm water drainage from a developed lot directly into the river?
Correct. Yep, it'll collect and convey storm sewer. Stormwater.
Yeah, and obviously it'll have to go through quantity control mechanisms. It's not direct discharge, but it is to discharge in a river after going through appropriate stormwater mechanisms.
Got it, thanks.
Ms. Shireman.
Is the timing of this right? Like, are we in the right process of doing this? Is it too early, too late, or is it typical?
So this has been a very complex redevelopment, probably as complex as we have done, which is partly why different pieces have come back at different time when they're ready. It's really a function of the complexity of this development being something that's truly unique to what we've undertaken here.
Will there be more of these coming before us?
To the best of our knowledge, no, this should be the last of the easements that we're aware of.
Okay.
Any other technical questions from Plan Commission to the staff? All right, having seen none, as I do with all agenda items, I'm going to have a public comment period. Is there any member from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Any member of the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment period. Commission, the action is upon you.
To adopt the recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, we will have a roll call vote.
Mr. Kulabali.
Aye.
Ms. Davy.
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer.
Aye.
Ms. Prop.
Aye.
Ms. Shireman.
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell.
Aye.
Chairman Perry.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda, item number 2, approved land acquisition of 19 East Irving Avenue. Eleven Leasing LLC is the owner, City of Oshkosh is the applicant. Have there been any site inspections by the Plan Commission? I see several. Okay, I'm going to accept the staff report as part of the record. Please present us your report.
Thank you. So the City of Oshkosh is requesting approval to acquire the property located at 19 East Irving Avenue for multiple departments' indoor storage needs. The subject area included in the request consists of a single lot with approximately 0.34 acres. The property is a corner lot with frontage on East Irving and Jefferson Street and contains one building that is approximately 7,500 square feet with a parking lot. The surrounding area consists primarily of residential uses along with some commercial uses to the north and west and vacant properties to the south that are owned by the redevelopment authority. Currently, the city uses the former Oshkosh Armory at 221 North Sawyer Street as a storage facility for the police department, city clerks, public museum, the electrical division, and facilities maintenance. And in 2024, the Armory site is scheduled to be renovated to the fire department's training facility. And as a result, the city will need to secure alternative storage sites for these divisions and departments. So staff feel that this building is suitable or is a suitable location for these future storage needs because it can easily be divided into different sections for each department's needs. It's climate controlled, it has public parking if needed, and it's close to City Hall and comes with a competitive purchase price that ensures the city is being good stewards of taxpayer dollars while also meeting the strategic goals to improve and maintain the infrastructure. So with that, staff recommends approval of the proposed property acquisition at 19 East Irving Avenue as requested.
Okay, thank you for your report. Plan Commission, are there any technical questions for the planning staff? Mr. Mitchell.
Thanks. Was this part of any sort of long-term facilities plan or any sort of planning that it went into somehow this site right here in the center of town, right
Yeah,
near downtown?
So there's individuals from the city's facilities and division that can help kind of address their site search as it relates to this.
Hold on 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Are there any additional technical questions from Plan Commission? Mr. Mitchell.
The plan is then to leave this as is, leave the parking lot as is, and just store stuff. No staffing, no real improvements to the site or anything.
Again, Mr. Urban kind of better talk about how they intend to utilize the property. Right now, it is largely an office storage building, and they intend to use it in a similar fashion, but he can talk about the specifics of what they're going to do and any improvements or changes that they're going to make.
Any other technical questions? Okay, I'm going to allow public comment, and at this time, we'll have a statement from the applicant, the city. Maybe you can address some of the questions that Mr. Mitchell asked. Thank
Sure.
you.
General Services is our area in John Urban. So we have identified, we have a facilities condition assessment report that was done for the city probably 2 years ago that the council's been involved with. And part of that plan, this all kind of dovetails into it. We're going to be working on, as Brandon said, we're going to be working on converting the former Sawyer storage into the fire training facility next year. So we have to prepare for that. Right now, we have several divisions that are in the Sawyer facility that we have to find other storage for. We identified a need for about 6,000 square feet for those three departments. That includes clerks, facilities, and what's the last one? Oh, museum. And so we needed to find a site that could fit all of their needs. It had to be climate controlled for various storage reasons. It needed to have a warehouse opportunity because the museum has several large items that need to be stored there. And it had to be something that the public could access when needed occasionally for clerks department with training as well as inspection of their machines during certain times of the year. So we did a search, and this building happens to exceed a lot of our needs, which is excellent. It's very close to City Hall for that. We don't anticipate having any parking outside. The lot will remain as is. And I think it's going to be a good fit for everything we need for presumably at least 5, 10, 15 years for storage. So as far as what's going to be done inside, there really won't be a lot of renovation required to make it usable for our needs because, quite frankly, it's storage. So we don't really need to do a lot to it. The museum will need to put some additional shelving inside because there's a warehouse section in the middle part of it. We'll be beefing up the security. We'll be beefing up some of the doors and so forth. So that's pretty much what we intend to do to it, but we think it's an excellent match for our needs.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to comment on this item? Any other members of the public wish to comment? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment period. Commission, the action is upon you.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mr. Mitchell.
I was going to ask Mr. Urban, but maybe you can answer. Is just looking for help in understanding why storage is a valuable use in what would be a prime location. Irving Street is a redone road with very nice houses as you get closer to the lake. You have a new intersection there. And it's 1 block off of Main. I'm just trying to understand why putting stuff has to happen in that type of environment where it couldn't happen, I don't know, somewhere less walkable, less conducive for a number of different reasons.
Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons why the city felt that was a sufficient facility for their needs. First is it was for sale for a significant amount of time with no other purchasers of it. So it was available on the open commercial market if there was other uses, and ultimately was not sold. So when the city facility search started, the proximity to City Hall is important, especially with some of the clerks and the training and the stuff they have to be doing. So having that close proximity to downtown is a benefit of this site when it comes to city operations and as we mentioned, stewards of taxpayer dollars. Having a facility that is an appropriate price is largely all you're set up for that use, so you're not incurring a ton of additional cost to renovate or change a building to meet your needs or build a new building to meet your needs. This building is largely set up, ready to go in close proximity where we're not having a lot of travel time for staff to go there and use the facility when it's needed.
Can we put the site up on? So if you were to turn to you don't have to, but if you were to turn to the east, you would see a residential neighborhood. And a continuation of a residential neighborhood that, again, continues to get nicer. So if the city intends to acquire this and leave it as is, that would be extremely disappointing because it's not an attractive site right now. And it detracts from the neighborhood and fails to achieve what is potential for the neighborhood in general. So I don't know what my ability to add anything in, but
So just
without
remember,
landscaping, without painting, without resurfacing any of it, it's just.
So remember, this is a land acquisition. This is a request to consider city purchasing of the building. It's not a zone change, it's not a plan development, it's nothing like that. Another private entity could come in and buy this tomorrow and use it for exactly the same
Well, that was my
use
follow-
as the city without needing any approvals, period.
That was my follow-up question is, so we talk about storage units and storage facilities a lot. I could have yesterday come in and purchased this and used it for the cold storage that we had talked about or any sort of storage facility.
As it is already a storage facility, you could maintain that use. Now, if you wanted to add on or renovate it into something different, land use controls would come into place. The reason this is not a land use item or a zone change like that is it's not a change of use. The building will largely be used.
What do you
Tomorrow
mean
as it is
it's
today.
currently used as a storage?
So a large section of this building is storage for what was previously electronic industries, and they had a small office component of it.
So the zoning that it currently sits at has something related to.
So it is
this
presently a non-conforming use. Obviously, in the zoning ordinance, if you couldn't build that building there today. But it is an existing, non-conforming land use that's being used, and it's not a change of land use if the city or some other entity would acquire it for the same use.
Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Colabali?
Aye.
Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer? Ms. Prop?
Aye.
Ms. Shireman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
No.
Chairman Perry?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-1.
Okay, item number 3 on the agenda is the specific implementation plan amendment for patio modifications at 425 Nebraska Street. Boatyard LLC, doing business as Dockside Tavern, is the owner. Andrew H. Iverson and Ganther Construction is the applicant. Have there been any site inspections of this property? I see 5. Okay, I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Please present your summary.
Thank you. So the subject site is Dockside Tavern, located at the north end of Nebraska Street with frontage on the Fox River. Surrounding area is mostly commercial uses with some vacant land to the west. So here's a view of the subject site. Currently has a bar within the patio area along the waterfront. The applicant is proposing to remove the existing bar and canopy and replace it with a new bar and canopy as well as a walk-in cooler. So it'd be shown right here will be the new bar and walk-in cooler. So the bar will be within the existing patio footprint, so there'll be no changes to impervious surfaces or no changes to the building. With it being located within the riverfront overlay district, design alteration review is required. So here's kind of a closer view of the site. Walk-in cooler here, bar right there. Here are the elevations of it. So it will be constructed of formed concrete and a semi-permanent stretched fabric tent canopy. And the walk-in cooler that will be installed adjacent to it will be screened with split face masonry. So staff does not have concerns with the appearance of it, as it should maintain a relatively attractive appearance from the waterfront. Here are the images of it. So here's the view from the waterfront. So again, the bar with the canopy and then the walk-in cooler. So with that, staff recommends approval of the SIP amendment with the findings in your staff report.
All right, thank you for your report. Plan Commission, technical questions for planning staff. Ms. Shireman.
Could you go back 2 or 3 slides again, this one? So is it coming out farther? Is that the piece that's in front of us? Because it's expanding?
No, so it's
Oh, that one, yeah.
it sits wholly within the current patio area.
Okay.
Because there are some design standards within this zoning district, that
Oh,
is what's triggering having it go
Design
through here.
Piece, it's not the size, because it's, okay, I heard the
No.
bar was within the size, but I was thinking that the cooler was sticking out or something. Okay,
Nope. It resides within the existing patio
so
space.
this is design space, this is design only. Okay.
All right, any other technical questions from the Plan Commission to the staff? Okay, seeing none, I will open a public comment period. Is the applicant here to make a statement? approach the podium and state your name and address for our records, please.
Andrew Iverson, address is 1080 Unit A, Cross Creek Drive, Kohler, Wisconsin. Only comment I have is, we worked close with staff to, develop a plan that, stays within the parameter of the existing patio and targeting to enhance what's currently there and modernize it a little from where it currently stands.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak on this agenda item? Any other members of the public that wish to speak on this agenda item? All right, I'm seeing none, so I'm going to close the public comment period. Commission, it is up to you for action.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendations and findings as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Any discussion from the Plan Commission? All right, I'm seeing none, so roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kulabali?
Aye.
Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer?
Aye.
Ms. Prop?
Aye.
Ms. Shireman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Chairman Perry?
Aye,
Motion carried 7-0.
thank you. Item number 4 on the agenda is a general development plan and specific implementation plan approval for an off-site parking lot for property located at the south side of Marion Road. Oshkosh Redevelopment Authority is the owner, and Mercury Marine, Dave Hahn, is the applicant. Have there been any site inspections of this particular property? The Miss Davy. All right, I'll accept the staff report as part of the record. Please present your summary.
Thank you. So the subject site is located on the north side of the Fox River. Mercury Marine is immediately to the west, and surrounding area is Riverwalk and multifamily development to the east and north. So the site consists of 3 parcels that are currently vacant. In 2006, there was a purchase agreement between Mercury Marine and the City of Oshkosh RDA for sale of the subject site, and that gave Mercury the right to construct and occupy a parking lot on these subject parcels. Here's the site plan for a proposed parking lot. It'll have 49 parking stalls. The existing Mercury Marine parking lot has 32 stalls and has 58 employees, so they're proposing this additional parking to have sufficient parking for the employees of their site. So staff is supportive of that use as it's consistent with the previous agreement between Mercury Marine and the RDA. Also, there is an ATC easement for overhead power lines that runs through the site, which limits the ability for buildings to be built on this lot. The applicant is requesting a BSM for reduced waterfront setback. They're proposing about a 30.5-foot setback from the waterfront, and code requires a 45-foot setback for parking areas. Staff is supportive of the setback reduction as it will be consistent with the setback of the existing parking lot to the west. Also, substantial landscaping will be placed along the waterfront side to kind of mitigate the view of the parking lot from the waterfront and offset that BSM for that setback reduction. The applicant is also requesting a BSM to allow the 2 interior parking lot islands without trees, as code requires overstory trees within parking row islands, and they're requesting that as the ATC easement prohibits planting trees within the easement. So staff is supportive of that as they do not have the ability to plant those trees, and they are planting shrubs and more trees along the perimeter of the parking lot to offset that BSM request. They're also requesting a BSM to allow the street frontage landscaping to be further than 10 feet from the right-of-way. Code requires the drip line of landscaping to be within 10 feet of the right-of-way line. And again, that ATC easement limits the area they have along that street frontage to meet that requirement. So staff is supportive of moving some of that landscaping further than 10 feet from that right-of-way line, as there's limited area there. Code also requires buffer yards along the west property line, as it's abutting a UI district. However, they do not have the ability to plant landscaping there due to vacated right-of-way along that property line. Staff is also supportive of waiving that requirement as it's abutting the Mercury Marine site, which is what the parking lot is ultimately being used for. There's also a buffer yard required along the riverfront parcels that's zoned institutionally. So staff is also recommending that we waive that requirement for the buffer yard, as it's abutting the river walk rather than development. And also there are existing landscaping along the river walk to kind of mitigate that impact. So staff recommends approval of the GDP SIP with the findings and conditions in your staff report.
All right, thank you for your report. Plan Commission, any technical questions for the planning staff? Ms. Davy?
Can you show us where the Riverwalk goes? Where it is on there? And it just goes to the street then?
This is that, talking to the mic. This is that connection point where it transitions from along the river to Marion Road.
Any other technical questions for the planning commission, for the planning staff? All right, I see none. I will hold a public comment on this agenda item as well. Is Mercury, representative from Mercury Marine here? State your name and address for our records, please.
My name is Ben Marshall from Excel Engineering, the design engineer. We're at 100 Camelot Drive in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. I guess, staff pretty much summarized the project. We're proposing just to add a new parking lot with, landscaping, obviously just trying to match, the point requirements and put landscaping where we are. I mean, ATC's got some, stricter, they have, stricter requirements for landscaping. They, as far as like where we can put trees and shrubs. So if you guys have any, technical questions or anything, I'm here. And then Dave from Mercury is also here. So.
All right, thank you. First, I'm going to allow other members of the public to speak on this agenda item. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak? Other members of the public that wish to speak? Okay, I see none, so I'm going to close the public comment period. However, I do have a request from the Plan Commission to ask the applicant an additional question. Ms. Shireman, go ahead.
I'm not sure if it's for you or it's for Dave, but where are the employees parking today if there's only 32 parking spots and there's 50 plus employees in that space?
Correct me if I'm wrong. They're using that existing parking lot, and then I think there are some cars parking on the grass where the current development.
The issue is you get the issue comes in and it becomes a problem. You have overlap of shifts. You got one shift still there and the other shift is coming in, and then they're trying to shuffle stalls and people are waiting for cars to leave. And so this will help a lot.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Mitchell has a question as well.
What was the basis for the number of additional stalls that you added?
The idea was to maximize the space and do this once rather than multiple times.
It wasn't actually like a reflection of, we know they need this many cars at this particular time?
We could probably use more if we could really get them, but this is maximizing the site.
All right, is there any other questions from the Plan Commission, the applicant? I see none. Thank you. Okay, the public comment period has been closed, so Commission, it is up to you for action.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any Plan Commission discussion on motion? Mr. Mitchell?
Hoping you can help me understand a little bit more on the basis that we have a 45-foot setback from the river. What are the benefits of having the setback from the river?
Yeah, so in a lot of our undeveloped areas, it was to make sure there's sufficient room for the Riverwalk to go through. However, with the Mercury Marine facility to the west of here, the Riverwalk, that's why it turns and goes up. So I was trying to make sure there was sufficient room for kind of that public space to go along the Riverwalk and provide, a decent amount of green space setback for the building. This is one of those ones where we're it's the last parcel of that greater area. And there's already some land uses next to it that are fully developed that kind of prohibit, at least in the near future, from that Riverwalk continuing.
And then you had indicated that given this current mapping, that trees couldn't go in that one sliver. In your idea, there's no other configuration that would enable trees. So that's part one, and then part two is why do we have a policy that seeks to break up parking lots and install trees?
So let me steal the mouse so I can point at the same time. So there's two requests. The first are for not putting the island trees in these two sections. Typically, we would want those. In this case, with the ATC lines, they are not prohibited. They're prohibited from putting those trees in. So we're essentially recognizing the fact that, yes, we'd prefer to see them. There's some additional requirements placed on this property because of the ATC easements and lines going over it, and ATC does not allow them. So we're dealing with what is in the best situation. We enhance our plantings through more bushes, more shrubs, try to offset the best we can. Understanding it's a condition that's placed above and beyond what just the city can enforce. Second is there is additional, this is an old vacated public right-of-way that has municipal services underneath it, and there are conflicts with planting on top of those. So Public Works and working with them, we wanted to minimize those conflicts that are within this area, which is why we're suggesting that they not have to plant here and move those points to the south and to the east. Again, trying to minimize conflicts with existing utilities and infrastructure that's in there because it is an old vacated right-of-way.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion?
I've got one.
Mr. Mitchell.
If I can. So we may not have this in the comprehensive plan. I'm not sure. I didn't take a look before this meeting, but I do recall when we did our Miller's Bay survey. An aquatic biologist came out and did a survey, and one of the conclusions was that one of the most harmful aspects of the park in terms of water quality is the proximity to pavement directly up to the lake, which allows for direct runoff. And so, shortly after we had the flooding, a lot of runoff goes. And so that's one of the I think the rationales, right, for having a buffer area between a development and water.
It's also why in more current codes, though we don't necessarily have the same situation older areas of the city, is we now require curbing of that hard surface. Previous code iterations in the older areas of the city, you don't typically see that curbing, so water could directly sheet flow from hard surfaces into the water. And everyone has recognized at this point in time that you need to prevent that from happening. So like a facility like this now is completely curbed, that all their water has to run back into the site, be treated appropriately before it can be discharged. So between the grading, the landscaping, and curbing, there is just that very goal of making sure we don't have surface runoff from that hard surface directly into the water to help mitigate with some of those environmental concerns.
Got it. Thank you.
Ms. Davy.
Following up on environmental concerns, is this lot going to be asphalt?
I believe yes.
Do we have any way to request non-asphalt for surfaces for things like parking lots? Because now we know that the PAHs are much more serious in those than we previously thought. And every time they would resurface it, it would raise the issue again.
Yeah. Right now, there's no mechanism in a land use control ordinance because land use is going to say parking is parking, which is separate from surfacing requirements. I think it is something that we should probably look at and see. Again, zoning and land use is not a mechanism that could regulate that because zoning is looking at it as a parking lot's parking lot. So potentially there's other ways through the city we could look at what are the impacts of asphalt versus concrete, and are other municipal ordinances that could maybe potentially look at something like that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? I once again look at this as one of those troubled riverfront parcels that we've seen a lot of lately, and I'm looking further. I'm not a big fan of the project as it is initially proposed, but the power line does create a significant challenge for any other use, and as such, I would have to support it. So, it's one of those troubled properties that we have along the river again. All right, any other discussion? All right, I see none, so let's have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Colabali? Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer?
Aye.
Ms. Prop?
Aye.
Ms. Shireman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Chairman Perry?
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right, item number 5 is a public hearing. This is a zone change from Heavy Industrial District, HI, to Heavy Industrial District with a planned development overlay and approval of a general development plan and specific implementation plan for property located at 2665 Oregon Street. Carl Lowenstein is the owner and applicant. Have there been any site visits? Ms. Prop? Okay, seeing none other, I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Please present your summary.
Thank you. So the subject site is Sturgeon Spirits Distillery. It is located on the west side of Oregon Street. Surrounding uses are primarily industrial uses along with residential to the south and the north. Here's a view of the existing subject sites. The applicant is requesting a zone change to add a plan development overlay, and that is intended to provide some flexibility to the zoning ordinance to accommodate site improvements, including an outdoor seating area. So staff is supportive of that rezone, as it will provide opportunity to enhance the site and also will allow for further review as it relates to neighboring residential properties. So here's a site plan that was submitted for a GDP SIP for an outdoor seating area. You can see in the top left here is the proposed outdoor seating area. It'll be 21 feet by 29 feet. It'll be utilized for additional seasonal seating for patrons of the Sturgeon Spirits tasting room. This is considered outdoor commercial entertainment, which is not allowed in the heavy industrial district. So the applicant is requesting a BSM to allow this land use in the HI district. Staff is supportive of that BSM as we feel it's compatible with the existing use of a distillery, and it should not be detrimental to the neighboring properties. The patio will be constructed of patio pavers, and it'll be surrounded by decorative 4-foot tall metal fencing, and then it'll have 8-foot tall cedar fencing to the north and to the east. Code requires outdoor commercial entertainment areas to be located at least 50 feet from residentially zoned properties, and the property to the north is zoned residential, I believe SR5. So they're requesting a BSM to allow reduced setback to 10 feet to that property line, where code would require 50-foot separation. Staff is supportive of a BSM to allow that, as the outdoor seating area is relatively small in size, and it will be a significant distance from the residential structure itself and located on the kind of the back side of the building. Also, the applicant has provided increased landscaping to offset that BSM. So you'll see a lot of evergreen trees, arborvitaes here. There is a buffer yard requirement with it abutting a residential district of a 0.6 opacity, and the 10-foot buffer yard along with 8-foot solid wood fencing and 16 arborvitae trees significantly exceeds that code requirement for buffer yard. So that's kind of how they're offsetting that code exception to allow the closer placement to the property line. The applicant has reached out to the neighbors and has been in discussion about the use, and they are open to supporting that outdoor entertainment use at the property. So with that, staff recommends approval of the rezone and GDP SIP with the findings and conditions in your staff report.
All right, thank you very much. Plan Commission, is there any technical questions to the planning staff? Mr. Mitchell.
On this screen right here, I see that those look like steps, and I was just curious if the city itself has any sort of accessibility requirements for when something like this happens. We can talk about this specific one in general, but I was just curious if across the board, if somebody wanted to do something like this, if we had accessibility requirements.
I would have to check with the inspections division to see what the ADA kind of requirements are for access to this. I don't know.
Ms. Shireman.
Although I believe the applicant reached out to the property owner, just in general, do we just take applicants' word at that they did, or is that something?
Yeah, so we send notices to the neighbors as well, and hopefully we hear from them if there is a difference of opinion. We still send notices to all the neighbors.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
This is kind of one of those land uses where, if you remember several years ago, we updated the code to make manufacturing retailer an allowed use, thinking we were improving the code by
sure.
making a way for these type of land uses to go in. We probably also need to consider that most of these, a brew pub, a distillery of this nature, probably makes sense to have this commercial outdoor space. You know, they play well together. So we may want to, you know, at a future workshop, we may want to consider if this is something we should address further in the code, because they do make some sense. But as the code requires that 50-foot setback from residential, we always want to make sure we look at those through this process or another process. Each time you think of like Carmela's Bar a year-ish ago came for a similar land use where they were going to be closer. So we want to make sure every time someone proposes one of these, we're looking at it. Is it appropriate? Are they offsetting if it does go closer?
Yeah, we should look at that. It reminds me of like the second drive. I've seen them
Yep.
and then putting in, so. Good.
Any other technical questions? Okay, I see none. So since this is a public hearing, I will open the public hearing and I will ask for a statement from the applicant. I know the applicant is here tonight, so please approach the podium, state your name and address for our records.
I'm Carl Lowenstein, 50 Lake Street, Oshkosh. I would just comment on the weird shape of the property. And so part of the reason of this patio is that north property line angles kind of severely from gets very close to the building. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do with the north side. We can't actually fit a driveway. It used to be a circle drive around the building. So we actually took out a bunch of asphalt and added the grass back because we wanted to have our tasting room on the back side of the building. But I think this is a good use for the space. I was just talking to the neighbor this week. She came over and said she was working and couldn't come to the meeting and had some concerns, mostly that there were too many plants on the north side of that fence because it might disturb her husband's ability to mow. So she wanted to make sure that those trees didn't become unruly and cause her any trouble in the long run because we have that narrower setback. Because it's only 5 feet from the fence when the code, I think, asks for 10 feet, and that's part of our BSM to make that a little closer to the property line than it would be otherwise. But she's also very happy that I'm building the fence. She actually has a pool on her property, and people can see it from the tasting room at the moment, and so we're actually giving her privacy, which is a good thing for both, I think, both her and I, as we go forward with this project. So. I think those are the kind of general comments that we have, and you know, it's a really great opportunity. We have a garage door on the back of the building, which really takes advantage of the acre of space that we have in this patio. Will really enhance the property for our use.
Thank you. You've learned well. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak on this agenda item in this public hearing? Any other members of the public wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, but please stay there because I believe the Plan Commission would like to ask you a question. Ms. Prop?
Hi. Can we go back to the slide that shows the, adjacent, yeah, that property on the south is residential, correct?
Yes, correct.
Is there a setback issue with that?
I think it's 50 feet from that property line.
That property, I believe, is actually zoned heavy industrial, so that setback doesn't apply to that property based on the zoning of it.
Oh, okay.
Right, so only the north side is residential.
Have you had a reaction from those neighbors?
I have talked to them, and they're actually not particularly about the patio. They did not reach out to me, and I thought it was far enough away from their property that they didn't reach out to me with any concerns.
Okay. Might you eventually have outdoor music on that site or not?
I think I would have to come back here if I wanted to do that. I'm not really sure on how that rule works. I mean, I do have the property as an acre, so it does extend all the way to the train tracks. So if there were more activities, it might be towards the back of the property out that way. But I'm not quite sure what the rules are surrounding that.
Yeah, if he was going to have, like the city just passed new regulations that relates to things like beer gardens, temporary uses for some sort of event, he would have to, based on the occupancy and if it had amplified music or not amplified music or a tent, he'd have to go through that process of getting any required permits for him.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thanks. Can you talk a little bit about the accessibility of the patio? Is it just on flat ground, or it looked like there was potentially steps there? So was
There actually is, it's all basically flat ground. The patio would be level with the parking lot. There is a slight step from the patio to the sidewalk right there. You can kind of see the lighter gray is actually a cement sidewalk. The darker gray is currently asphalt, and there's about a 6-inch, I think, no, probably less, 5-inch step between the concrete and the asphalt. But there's actually, if you come further south, there's a ramp. So you can actually enter the building from the back with no grade at all, directly from the parking lot. And that's true in the front as well. There's the sidewalk and the asphalt are all level with the building. So
Awesome.
it's really on a slab and fully accessible
Thanks.
right now.
Okay, is there any other clarification needed by the Plan Commission? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Lowenstein. Plan Commission, any action on the table for you?
Make a
Motion to
motion.
adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? All right, having seen none, I'm going to have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kulabali?
Aye.
Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer?
Aye.
Ms. Prop?
Aye.
Ms. Shireman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Chairman Perry?
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
Wonderful. That's the end of our actionable items on our agenda. The last item that we have before adjournment is the Planning Director's Report. It's an update on the Lake Butte development.
Yeah, just very quickly for Plan Commission, in case you weren't aware, last Tuesday's Common Council meeting, Council did approve the GDP, and then during the SIP did reduce the building to a 3-story structure. So they approved it with that 3-story requirement. So if the developer chooses to go forward with it, right now it's under that 3-story requirement.
The question I have is, can they come back if they really want a 4?
So they could reapply and have to go back through the entire process again if they chose to. It'd go back through notices, meetings, the whole process if they wanted to.
And then back to the City Council.
Correct, and then ultimately back to council.
Mr. Mitchell.
One question on that for clarification. The main thing that they were requesting was the height, right? I mean, because you had emphasized, or staff, I think, had emphasized that this is the density. They could go well beyond that. They could do essentially what they were doing except for the height.
There was a number of base standards. There was the 0-foot setbacks from the internal property lines that they were creating. There was the height.
Because of the multiple lots.
Correct, the multiple lots, correct. There was the height-based standard. Brian, I'm looking to you, see, help me remember what other base standards were on there.
The height is related to the 4th floor.
Correct, correct. Yeah, base code was 2.5 stories, 35 feet in height. They were proposing 4 stories at 59.3 feet in height, and ultimately council chose to approve it with a 3-story requirement.
Mr. Kowali.
That's just for the first phase?
Correct, it was only for the first phase. Any future phases would have to come back through the whole process, meeting, plan commission, council.
How many buildings are on the first phase?
2.
3 with the.
3 with the clubhouse, 2 multifamily buildings and the clubhouse.
And then, as you know, there was a lot of discussion about the meeting, the prior meeting. Has there been follow-up conversations about how do we make sure that that doesn't happen again?
So any multifamily, we're just going to require a neighborhood meeting. So just, if it's a multifamily project, we will be requiring neighborhood meetings across the board moving forward.
Is there any other questions for the planning director on his report?
So how did the people react to that?
The developer?
No. The neighbors.
My general understanding is that there are still concerns from the neighbor side.
Yep. Any other questions for the planning director on his report? No. Okay, seeing none. Last item on the agenda is adjournment for tonight. We have a motion from Mr. Kiefer and a second. This is a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. We do have 2 work.